All right, for more on this, let's bring in Rebecca Koffler, former Defense Intelligence Agency officer and author of Putin's playbook, Russia's Secret Plan to Defeat America. Rebecca, thanks so much for coming on. You know, I think what strikes me is to hear Antony Blinken not parsing words, sounding the alarm that China is possibly going to be providing lethal support to Russia, would indicate that there's a real concern there. And how are we to read China's response that this is all nonsense? I mean, these are the same people who are still claiming that this was a weather device, not a spy balloon.
Oh, this was absolutely not a weather device. This was a unmanned, high-altitude vehicle that was sent here specifically because the Chinese have identified a glaring gap in our airspace security, okay? So China, indeed, is already providing lethal support to Russia. It's the already unmanned aircraft. These are drones that the Russians have been using to target Ukrainians, right? And so given that Russia and China have announced the so-called no-limit partnership, which is not really a true partnership, but they're joining forces in order to challenge the United States. And the biggest threat for us right now, especially when we have one war in the European theater, is a two-theater war. That right now our military analysts are concerned that we're not going to be able to handle because we're depleting our own stockpile of weaponry by having provided $196 billion worth of high-tech military hardware. Yeah. We're talking ammo. The Ukrainians have a very high burn rate.
Well, I know what you're talking about on the drones, the DJI drones that obviously the Russians have been using to track Ukrainians on the battlefield. They also have used them to monitor Uyghur camps. And, you know, the U.S., a number of our agencies have used them in the past. Department of the Interior dropped them from use a couple of years ago because of concerns that China could be hacking them. But they're still in use all over the country, state and local police departments, for instance, because they are the prevalent drone manufacturer. So that's a risk. But when we're talking about lethal support, I mean, that would be a significant change from, this drone software that is to be found all over the planet. Turning, though, to one other thing you said about a concern that we might be burning through our stockpiles. Obviously, there could be fatigue in the coming days and weeks and years, especially among the American public, about continuing to support Ukraine when there's not an end to this war in sight. That being said, we've been hearing that the Moldovan president's warning of a coup, you've got troops staging on the Belarusian border, and lingering concerns that Putin's not a rational actor. Anything that he does, he could use a tactical nuke, a chemical weapon, could really change the trajectory of this war. So do you see any indications that this is heading in a more concerning direction, that Putin is going to move forward at all costs, and that we need to, even though we've got concerns about our stockpiles, maintain support and maybe change our posture and how much we produce?
Okay, first of all, Putin is indeed a rational actor. I spent my intelligence career, on this target: Russia, doctrine and strategy, and Putin. His thinking, though, is not American thinking. He's not suicidal. I'd like to point out a cognitive disconnect in President Biden's assessment of Russian strategy and Putin's decision calculus. On the one hand, President Biden says that Russia has failed in Ukraine. Well, if Russia has failed in Ukraine, why do we need to provide top-of-the-line high-tech weaponry to them? And how in the world, if Russia has exhibited this tremendous tactical incompetence, which it did, that it's going to go after Poland, Moldova, and any of these countries? First of all, it will trigger Article 5, collective defense, if Putin were to invade Poland. He's not suicidal. He's 100% rational. Okay, so I don't assess that Putin is going to use chemical weapons or even nuclear weapons unless the Russian intelligence concludes that we are about to deploy forces into the theater, or we are about to deploy, warplanes or any kind of take any action that will significantly flip the battlefield.
So you're saying that he could take some significant action if the U.S. provides warplanes. That's an interesting point you're making there.
Absolutely, because the warplanes could strike Russia proper. And look, we've war-gamed all of this back in the intelligence community. There were dozens of war games. Every single conflict ended up either in cyber, Armageddon, nuclear Armageddon, and President Biden knows that.